nothing.
No.
You're offering us
You need to
nothing.
get his ass out of
You
here.
said this was not predictable. This is totally predictable when you choose
You're
not
out
to
of
do
line.
anything.
Sir, you are out of line.
I'm
Sir, you are out of line. Please leave.
Stop. This is on you until you choose to do something different. This will continue to happen. Somebody needs to stand up for the children of this state, or they will continue to be killed, just like they were killed in Uvalde yesterday.
Hey YouTube, this is Noah, and I'm currently a college student living in the city of Austin, and I want to welcome you to No-Key News, a section of my channel where I discuss politics and current events in the state of Texas. So today, I'm going to be discussing something that I think we're all quite excited for, and that is the 2022 Texas gubernatorial election. I'm going to call it the Guber race for short, and this is the race for governor, Texas governor, between current Governor Greg Abbott and former U.S. Representative Beto O'Rourke. So as a brief outline for this video, first I'm going to be talking about some of the recent highlights that have been unfolding in this race. Second, the background and kind of history on both candidates. And third, why this election is so important for Texas. So let's get started. So starting with some recent highlights, I think it's kind of obvious that most people in Texas knew that the race would ultimately come down between Beto and Abbott, as they both kind of easily won their primaries. The main issue is, or I wouldn't say issue, but I think one also big highlight to note is that most people expect Abbott to win, given that this Texas is a pretty conservative state. The recent highlight though has been that the race has been tightening, i.e. becoming a bit closer, and the gap has kind of shrunk between Beto and Abbott. So for example, according to a Quinnipiac University poll as of June 15th, 2022, 48% of voters supported Abbott, while 43% supported Beto. Now, obviously that does seem pretty close, but when we get to some of the context into that, so for example, compare that to where back in December, 52% of those in the polls supported Abbott and only 37% supported Beto. So there's been a pretty big change in the polls, where the race again has become a lot more closer between the two. And I won't get down into all the numbers, but basically, not totally new that it's not totally new or surprising that Abbott is leading among men, whites, and generally older people. And on the flip side, Beto is leading among women, younger people, and minorities. And their most recent interaction, as shown at the beginning of the video, wasn't the most friendly. And so in case you didn't catch everything that Congressman O'Rourke said to Governor Abbott in that conference, he said, quote, "You are doing nothing," you as in Governor Greg Abbott, "you are doing nothing, you are offering us nothing. You said this was not predictable. This was totally predictable when you choose not to do anything. This is on you. Until you choose to do something different, this will continue to happen. Somebody needs to stand for the children of this state, or they will continue to be killed just like they were killed in Uvalde yesterday." And so obviously this happened after the Uvalde shooting that occurred on May 24th, 2022, so exactly a month ago, at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. The shooter used assault rifles to take the lives of 19 children and 2 adults. And so since this shooting was fairly recent, obviously right now it's a big issue, but come November, I think it's going to be an issue that a lot of voters are going to be paying attention to, as to what Governor Abbott or what former Congressman O'Rourke will be, what policies they'll be announcing, what actions they're going to take, or what they won't take regarding gun control to curb gun violence in Texas. However, there's going to be an even bigger issue / priority for voters come November, and that is, you probably already guessed it, the issue of abortion rights. As of June 24th, 2022, that was today, when this video was recorded, the Supreme Court overturned the Roe v. Wade decision in the Dobbs case, essentially declaring that abortion is no longer a constitutional right, and thus every state will now have the power to decide whether or not they will allow abortions to be legal or illegal. So for conservatives, pro-life activists, Republicans, this was considered a huge victory. On the other hand, for Democrats, pro-choice activists, this was a huge catastrophe and rollback for women's reproductive rights. Now, let's get into the responses of both candidates regarding this pretty huge landmark decision. So in response to the recent Supreme Court decision, Governor Abbott said, quote, "The U.S. Supreme Court correctly overturned Roe v. Wade and reinstated the right of states to protect innocent, unborn children. Texas is a pro-life state, and we've taken significant action to protect the sanctity of life," end quote. And most people believe that what he was referencing to when he said that we've taken significant action was the trigger law that he passed earlier. What the trigger law essentially does is that since this was passed earlier before the decision came out, it was essentially saying if Roe v. Wade was overturned, then this law would be, quote, triggered and thus actually ban abortions in the state of Texas. So most people expect that law to be passed, to go into effect fairly soon. Now, on the flip side, what did Congressman O'Rourke say in response to this decision? He said, quote, "The only way to overcome today's decision is to win this race for governor. The Supreme Court has sent this back to the states, and our state's current governor has outlawed abortion beginning at conception with no exception for rape or incest," end quote. And just for reference, both of these quotations come from an article in the Houston Chronicle written by Edward McKinley. So let's start with the backgrounds on both candidates, starting with Governor Greg Abbott. In 2002, he was the Attorney General of Texas, and that was his first statewide office. 2014, that was the first time he ran for governor, and obviously he won, and he has been the governor of Texas ever since. And most recently, according to a New York Times article, quote published in 2020, he was described as, quote, "the driving force behind one of the hardest right turns in recent state history," end quote. AKA, he's very conservative and a lot of Texans love him. So let's look at the background and history behind Beto O'Rourke. He was a Democratic congressman serving in the U.S. House of Representatives in 2012. He was elected in 2012 and served to 2018. He didn't gain much popularity until his famous Senate race against 2018 against Ted Cruz. And although he lost this race, he did set a record for the most votes ever cast for a Democrat in Texas history. So obviously it was a very huge, although they lost, it was a very huge election in the term of support that was gained. Also given the fact that Texas, again, is a very strong conservative state. More recently, in 2020, he ran for president. He obviously didn't win, and now he's currently running for Texas governor. One of the most unique things about this candidate is his personality. As Peter Hamby, from an article in the Vanity Fair written in 2018, describes him as, quote, "authentic, full of energy, stripped of consultant-driven sterility, and waged at all times with a social media prime video screen in mind," end quote. In other words, he's kind of like the Texas version of Obama, which is why he appeals so well to the millennial and younger generations. Last, and certainly not least, let's talk about why this election is so important for Texas. First obvious reason being that whoever controls the position of governor is going to have an impact on the political agenda and the laws that are going to be passed. But on another level, there would be a deep impact on the political culture in Texas, and more so if former Congressman O'Rourke were to win this race. I say this because Governor Abbott is expected to win. As we saw earlier, he's leading in the polls just by a little bit. And he's also expected to win because, one, he's an incumbent, and there's always the advantage of being an incumbent. And two, Texas is a very conservative state, so that's why every statewide office currently is held by Republicans. So if former Congressman O'Rourke were to win the position of governor, that would be quite an impact on Texas for a couple of reasons. First, it'd mean that he would be the first Democratic governor of Texas since 1995. Second, it would mean that Texas, again, would no longer be a conservative stronghold, but be more of a purple state than a red state. And third, again, it would mean that he would be the only Democrat in a statewide office in the state of Texas. So again, even though it's expected that Governor Abbott will win, there would be quite a change in the political culture in Texas if former Congressman O'Rourke were to win the race. Last thing, real quick, another reason I want to mention why the election for governor is so important is that in light of the Dobbs decision, where the Supreme Court essentially gave the power to states to declare abortion legal or illegal, it's going to be even more important as to who and which party controls the with state governments, because now, as we've seen, controversial issues like abortion will no longer be determined at the federal level. Hey YouTube, I want to thank you for watching this video, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Noki News section of my channel, where I discuss politics and current events in the state of Texas. And if you have any questions or thoughts regarding the contents that I cover in this video, make sure to leave it down in the comment section below. Thanks.